It's over at HartmannReport.com. It's our daily rant today. Wall Street's barons are causing homelessness. Can we stop them? And this is just absolutely astonishing. Zillow, the big national real estate listing company, Zillow.com is their website. They funded an in-depth research study into the relationship between housing prices and homelessness, which is remarkable and remarkably socially responsible. And what they found is that whenever the cost of houses exceeds 32% of the median income in a neighborhood, you start seeing a rapid explosion of homelessness. In other words, when houses begin to cost more than 3 times the average wage, then homelessness starts to stalk neighborhoods. The median American income right now is $35,805. Say $36,000. So what they're saying is for the median neighborhood, if the house is costing more than 3 times that, which would be like what, 100,000? You're going to start seeing homelessness. And what we're finding for what the Fed, that the median house right now is selling for $374,900. That was last year's numbers from the Fed. As Zillow reports, the rent burden already exceeds the 32% of median income threshold in 100 of the 386 markets included in this analysis. I tell the story of my dad back in 1956, or 57, I guess it was. I was 6 years old. He got a VA loan, which again, we used to subsidize Americans buying homes. Now we're subsidizing giant corporations buying homes with tax breaks. But anyhow, he bought this house in South Lansing, Michigan for $13,000. Maybe it was 15. I'm pretty sure it was 13. Anyhow, it was in that neighborhood. And that was about twice what he made when he was working at, a good union job at a tool and die shop. Obviously, the dollar was worth a lot more back in 1957, but back then, the median price of the single-family home was 2.2 times the median American family income. It was about twice what people earned. That was the cost. And that's why people were able to live and pay their rent and pay their mortgage and have food for their kids and even put their kids through college, which also wasn't very expensive then, and afford health insurance or afford medical expenses, because housing wasn't taking this giant bite out of us. Today, the Fed says the median house is selling for $374,000. And we're seeing this in part because, there's more Americans and fewer houses. When my dad bought his house, there were 168 million people in the United States. Today, there's 330 million. And, it's true that, Reaganism has stopped the growth of wages while causing an explosion in the growth of everything else. But the main thing that's driving this is actually not, it started with foreign investment. There was this big wave of foreign investment in U.S. housing over the last 30 years, more or less. But the last decade has been a completely different thing. And it can track back to this study that Morgan Stanley did in 2011 that they published, saying that basically this is the great new investment opportunity. Buy up all the available housing in a middle-class neighborhood, turn it all into rentals. So basically, if somebody wants to live there, if it's a neighborhood that's got good schools, that was the principal magnet. If you got a neighborhood with good schools, buy up all the houses in that neighborhood and then rent them out to people. So people can no longer buy the houses. And what this does is it drives up the housing prices. They tell the story, there's a Wall Street Journal article about this, Meet Your New Landlord, Wall Street. They say, on the first Tuesday of every month, this is in Atlanta, where the first Tuesday of every month is when they auction off homes that are in foreclosure. On the first Tuesday of each month, investors toted duffels stuffed with millions of dollars in cashier's checks made out in various denominations so they wouldn't have to interrupt their buying spree with trips to the bank. In this one suburb of Nashville that they documented in the Wall Street Journal, the vice mayor, Bruce Hull, says, before the big companies came in, you could rent a 3-bedroom, 2-bath house for $1,000 a month. The average rent now as a consequence of it, well, just quote from the Wall Street Journal, quote, the average rent for 148 single-family homes in Spring Hill owned by the big four Wall Street investor landlords was about $1,773 a month. So rents have almost doubled. Ryan Desember just published this new book, Underwater, How Our American Dream of Homeownership Has Become a Nightmare. And he tells the story of home buyers, middle-class families who are trying to buy their first home. And they're going in and they're making offers on houses at asking price. There's a house on the market for $150,000. They offer $150,000. And suddenly somebody comes in like minutes later and says, we'll make it $160,000 cash. And of course, the home buyers can't offer cash. They have to say, well, it's, subject to approval of the bank, and the bank won't approve it until there's an inspection. And so it's going to take a month. And, home sellers would much rather have cash than wait a month. So anyhow, they note that this guy, this one family, the Jacobs family, they were bewildered. They made an offer on a house. As I recall, it was around $90,000 house. They made an offer on it. And it was at ask. And then the seller came back and said, well, somebody just offered $10,000 more or a couple $1,000s more, whatever it was. And so the Jacobs family upped their bid, and instantly the other bidder, and finally it just hit the point, it passed through $100,000. It hit the point where the Jacobs family said, we can't afford it anymore. And they backed out. And they were trying to figure out who was this aggressive bidder. It turns out it was Blackstone Group, which is an almost $1 trillion investment fund run out of New York City. It's a Wall Street investor group. It's the largest real estate investor in the world right now. And that week, they were buying $150 million worth of American houses every week, trying to spend over $10 billion. In 2018, according to the Wall Street Journal, corporations bought 1 out of every 10 homes sold in America. Desember, in his book, he notes between 2006 and 2016, when the home ownership rate fell to its lowest level in 50 years, the numbers of renters grew by about a quarter. And again, you go back to this study by Zillow. What Zillow found was that, quote, communities where people spend more than 32% of their income on rent can expect a more rapid increase in homelessness, number one. Number two, income growth has not kept pace with rents, leading to an affordability crunch with cascading effects that for people on the bottom economic rung increases the risk of homelessness. And number three, the areas, I'm reading from the study, the areas that are most vulnerable to rising rents, unaffordability, and poverty hold 15% of the U.S. population and 47% of people experiencing homelessness. It's measurable, it's predictable, and it's destroying what's left of the American working class, particularly minorities, and creating an absolute screaming explosion in homelessness. And this also is locking middle-class people out from being able to grow equity. Most of the wealth of most middle-class families, it's true of me, it's probably true of most people, is their home, their equity in their home. That's their biggest pile of money. And it increases over time faster than any other investment you can make, and relatively safely. But now you've got families who are being locked out of the market, locked out of the ability to buy a home, and then having to rent where you gain no equity over time. You don't gather wealth. And then the big corporations come in and start doubling the rents or increasing the rents, and pretty soon you've got this explosion of homelessness. When is America going to wake up? When are we going to do something about this?